Hey guys, tonight we begin with a strange, slow drifting tale about ancient Rome and the yearly ritual that makes even modern night thinkers blink twice as if the past was made of stranger rainwater than ours ever was. So settle in. Breathe a little softer. Let your eyes get heavy. Rome once believed the Tiber River was not just water but alive like a silent old god watching lovers and soldiers and priests pass by while tides listened without breath. They thought the river needed brides, which is already one of those ideas history offers us like a half-baked loaf, still warm and too soft to hold shape, but we will hold it anyway. So once a year priests in red robes walked to the river, and they did something that feels both unreal and sadly very real in that Roman way where power and belief were stronger than fear. They sent into the water 2 sets of offerings. 27 straw dolls shaped like maidens, and 300 real teenage girls, living breathing scared or resigned to fate. These girls were called brides of the river god. Brides made for flowing water. It was not romance, it was duty, or so they were told. The night before the ritual, the city felt quiet like even marble remembered its past, and wondered where all roads really led. People whispered that the chosen girls were pure and untouched because the river god disliked rivals. Their families did not always resist because Rome could convince even stone to nod if it spoke long enough. Priests said the Tiber would bless crops and calm storms and make the empire steady like a mountain if the brides surrendered themselves. No one asked what the river whispered back. Water speaks softly and only to those who drown inside it. The girls were taken to the ritual site wrapped in simple garments and crowned with flowers that wilted faster than prayers. The priests stood in red robes bright as blood under a lazy sun. They chanted slowly, drawing out every word until it stretched across the wind. Citizens watched, though some looked away, pretending interest in the sky or the taste of dust. The girls stepped forward one by one. Some cried. Some did not. Everyone knew what came next. The priests pushed the brides into the water. Some gasped. Some sank. Some thrashed like small birds caught in a storm. Rome called this devotion. The river called it appetite. Historians still wonder why 300. Was the god greedy, or was the state insecure and desperate to bargain with something invisible? Perhaps numbers felt powerful, and Rome liked power more than mercy. 27 straw dolls were thrown too as symbolic brides, perhaps to distract the river like a cheap decoy, yet the real girls still followed. They were young, teenage, lives barely begun. Some believed this was honor. Some feared it like winter. Some accepted it the way a candle accepts wind. One year a girl did something unexpected, which even Rome could not script. She broke surface instead of surrendering. She clung to a floating log or plank or maybe fate itself. For 3 days she held on while birds circled and the sun peeled at her skin. She drank rain, she spoke to the river like it was a mother. She would not let go. People later whispered her name, though no record keeps it safe. She drifted where the Tiber grew slow and reeds tangled around her ankles. Her fear did not leave her. It only sat quieter. Let us drift a little deeper into why such rituals survived. Rome lived on myth the way we live on light. Gods were everywhere in homes, in trees and water. If you told a Roman, no god here, they would laugh and open a window as if proof was as simple as a breeze. Women in Rome were often beauty possessions, vessels of alliance. A girl could become a bride of a senator, or a soldier, or a river, depending on who held authority. The river bride ritual was older than half the marble we associate with Rome. Perhaps it came from tribes before empire, sacrificed to keep floods gentle and harvests fat. Water gives life, so water must be fed. That logic floats like driftwood, absurd but steady. Now imagine the city on May 15 every year, vendors selling figs. Children playing unaware or pretending to be. Mothers holding their breaths. Fathers silent. The priests walking toward the river in that unhurried ceremonial pace, slow like sleep. The red robes bright against dusty stone. The girls lined up like sheep too young to understand or too old to scream. This was tradition, and tradition rarely asks permission. The sound of chanting rolled like fog. People watched because watching is easier than changing. The girl who survived became a whisper that moved through alleys and taverns, soft but persistent. Some said she was blessed, some said cursed. The river had chosen her, or rejected her, or forgotten her. Rome loved speculation more than truth because speculation could be shaped into whatever story people needed. Her family, if still living, might have wept or hidden or thanked Jupiter. We do not know. History kept the event but not the girl, as if she was more myth than flesh. This survival forced people to ask questions, though quietly. If one bride lived, what did it mean? Did the river god approve spare or simply miss? Did the ritual hold power if one escaped? Should she return to complete it? Should future brides resist? Answers never came. Romans rarely changed rituals swiftly. Even when doubt seeped like river water through stone, belief held strong. Tonight we float through this realm of distant time like a ghost with gentle curiosity. We see Rome not as marble perfection, but as human, strange, flawed, fearful. The river ritual shows us how belief can turn innocence into currency. The idea of marrying water feels dreamlike, yet sharp enough to cut the mind. We imagine 300 girls each year sent away for reasons only priests claim to understand. That is thousands over decades. A city fed the river like a desperate friend trying to please a silent companion. One wonders how the river felt with each splash, each heartbeat fading under its skin. Did it grow heavier? Did it remember faces? Rivers carry memory like silt. Maybe somewhere under modern Tiber flows the echo of brides long gone. And just when Rome thought this ritual was unshakable, like law, like empire, like destiny, something unexpected began to stir among the citizens. Rumors about the escaped girl started spreading faster than anyone could silence. People spoke in shadowy corners that maybe the river god was not angry without brides, but angry because brides were forced. Maybe devotion meant choice, not sacrifice. These whispers were small at first, like the tiny ripple before a larger wave. Then one year, a group of young Romans appeared along the riverbank before dawn to watch the ritual more closely. They did so not out of reverence, but to see if another girl might survive. Their presence was quiet but deliberate. Eyes alert, breath steady. And among them stood a figure no one expected to challenge tradition. The figure was a senator's son, slender, pale, almost poetic, in posture, the kind of Roman youth who read philosophy instead of learning how to throw a spear. He watched the brides lined up with wide eyes as if the city he loved had suddenly grown fangs. His name has been lost like dust blown across centuries, but for our purposes let us call him Lucius, because every mysterious Roman seems to answer to that name eventually. Lucius stood still while red-robed priests prepared their chant. His breath trembled like a candle, but he did not move. Years of ritual had made the city numb, yet something in him stirred restless, like a horse before thunder. People whispered Lucius was sensitive, too soft for war, too serious for pleasure, too thoughtful for politics. In a world powered by empire, his heart felt like a fragile instrument. Where others saw tradition, he saw harm. Where others accepted faith, he questioned its maker. That morning he saw 300 girls once more standing at the river edge, silent and pale like ghosts waiting to be born into water. And for the first time he did not look away. He simply watched, and his stillness felt louder than the priests themselves. The ritual began again. The chanting rose, slow, steady, hypnotic, like waves against a cliff. The priests approached the brides, lifting their arms in ritual blessing. Lucius noticed something odd. One priest hesitated slightly before pushing a girl forward. His hand shook. His gaze flickered like a bird trapped between instinct and conscience. Perhaps even among the holy red robes, doubt had begun to bloom. Doubt spreads like shadow at sunset, soft at first, then everywhere. One girl, no more than 15, stood closest to the edge. Her hair dark like river mud, her eyes trying not to drown before her body even touched water. Lucius stepped forward, a single pace, small but enormous. No one stopped him because no one expected him to act. No one expected anyone to act. Tradition had weight thicker than armor. Yet here he was watching a child about to be given to the river like an offering of bread. He exhaled slowly. The priests finished their chant. The first bride stepped forward, another breath, then the push. The splash was soft, but it echoed in the mind. The girl struggled, arms flailing, then settling as cold claimed her. The river was wide and uncaring. Lucius felt his chest tighten like someone had tied rope around his ribs. Another bride stepped up. Another splash. History continued like a wheel that refused to pause. People whispered but dared not speak louder. Fear held their tongues hostage. Yet beneath that silence something began to turn. Each splash was a question. Each bride a reminder of cruelty accepted as normal. The escaped girl's story finally felt real, not mythical. If one could survive, then perhaps survival was not sacrilege. Perhaps the river did not need brides. Perhaps belief had trapped Rome more tightly than chains. Lucius watched the 10th girl fall, and for a moment he closed his eyes not to block the sight but to gather resolve. His mind drifted through memories of philosophers who taught that virtue was stronger than tradition, and that justice must stand even when empire kneels. He opened his eyes. He breathed. He took another step. A priest finally noticed and frowned, as if Lucius' presence disturbed rhythm. He asked softly if Lucius needed something. Lucius answered with a calm voice steady like stone beneath water. He asked why the girls must die. Why the river needed wives who could not consent. Why Rome butchered its own youth for unseen gods. The priest blinked twice as if words felt heavier than ceremony. He said this ritual was older than the Republic, older than Senate, older than memory. Lucius asked if age alone made something right. Age can rot just as fruit does. Longevity does not guarantee honor. Whispers spread among onlookers like wind brushing wheat. No one had questioned the ritual aloud for generations. People stared wide-eyed, unsure whether to fear or hope. The priests shifted uneasily, red robes bright but courage dimming. Lucius continued speaking slowly, measured like a reader at twilight. He suggested perhaps the ritual had lost meaning, or perhaps it never had one beyond control. The words hovered above the river like incense. The girls still waited in line, trembling like leaves. One priest older than marble with wrinkles like river cracks approached Lucius slowly. His face was neither angered nor softened, but tired like night nearly over. He admitted perhaps Rome misunderstood gods. Perhaps sacrifice was not always blood. Perhaps the river wished for peace, not brides. He said he once dreamed the Tiber spoke to him and said, "You do not need to drown them, for the water already knows how to take life when it wishes." Lucius listened carefully. The priest's voice fluttered like moth wings. Truth sometimes arrives quiet, not thunderous. Just then a girl in the line stepped forward without force. She looked at Lucius' eyes, shining not with hope but with defiance, tired of fear. She said she did not want to drown. She said if the river god wanted brides, it could ask, not take. Her voice small yet intense like ember waiting for flame. The crowd gasped. A bride speaking was unheard of. Silence spread thick and solid. Lucius turned toward the crowd and asked what if Rome offered something else? Wisdom, courage, art, anything but daughters. People exchanged glances. Some nodded. Some shook heads. But seeds had been planted. Seeds grow even in dry soil. The priests now stood uncertain between tradition and awakening. Their ritual unraveling like thread from worn cloth. The river flowed silently, as if watching amused. Lucius stepped toward the water, touched its surface with calm fingertips. The cold was sharp, reminding him of mortality. He whispered a prayer, a gentle apology to the river for centuries of sorrow. He asked the water to accept peace instead of blood. The river rippled slowly like a sleeping creature turning in dream. Suddenly a breeze swept across the bank, unexpected and strange. Flowers in the bride's hair shivered, robes rustled. Water stirred more deeply than usual, as if answering. No one moved. The wind picked up like a sigh from unseen mouth. Lucius stared into the water, expecting nothing, yet hoping everything. Then something happened. The surface of the Tiber shifted in a slow, powerful roll, almost like breath rising from beneath. The girls stepped back, startled. Priests froze. Citizens trembled. Lucius' eyes widened not in fear, but in awe. It felt like the river itself was listening. And then from the heart of the water, a shape began to rise. Not human, not beast, not fully formed, but something in between, like a silhouette birthed from ancient myth. The surface broke, and a figure emerged, dripping reeds and moonlight. Wet hair clung like moss, eyes pale and endless like river depth. It stood silent, staring at Lucius with expression unreadable. The crowd exhaled all at once, as if lungs had been held hostage. No one spoke because no words could exist for what they witnessed. The river had answered. The figure of water and shadow stood before them, unmoving like a story carved into the river itself. Lucius felt his pulse slow, as if time had grown thick and syrup-like. The brides huddled together, unsure whether this was salvation or doom, since gods in Rome were not gentle by reputation. The priests stared, eyes wide, robes trembling like dry leaves near flame. It was the first time in generations that ritual answered back. The river had chosen silence for centuries, now it breathed, and Rome listened. The being raised one arm, slow as moonrise. Droplets fell like glass falling through sleep. No one dared step closer. Lucius forced his feet to remain planted, though he felt like a child before lightning. The figure spoke, though its mouth barely moved. The voice was soft, deep, slow, the way ancient mountains might speak if allowed. It said that the river never demanded brides. The river only wanted memory, devotion, respect, not lives thrown like grain. It said sacrifice had been twisted by men who feared storms more than they feared cruelty. The priests trembled, for their scripture had just melted like wax in sunlight. The bride's gasp for life returned to them all at once like fresh air after drowning. One girl began to sob loud enough to ripple against the silence. Lucius stepped forward, respectful but bold. He asked if Rome could change tradition, if people would allow rivers to flow free without blood tithe. The being nodded, slow like a tree bowing to wind. It said change was long overdue, that Rome must learn gentleness or crumble beneath weight of its own fear. The priests knelt, unable to stand against truth that flowed like cold water through their ribs. Lucius watched them with pity, not victory. Humans cling to tradition the way children cling to blankets, even when blankets burn. He hoped this moment would soften, not shatter them. The being looked upon the 300 girls lined like pale petals before storm. It stretched a hand, and the river beneath them responded. A soft current pushed each girl to shore, as if the water itself carried them with care. The crowd broke into low murmurs of awe, fear, confusion, wonder, all tangled like reeds. One girl fainted into her mother's arms. Another laughed hysterically, though joy cracked into disbelief. Lucius breathed deeply, slow, steady, like ritual breathing, turned toward life instead of death. He asked the being what Rome must do now in place of sacrifice. The being replied that Rome must give kindness, must tend the riverbanks, keep water clean, feed not daughters but effort and care. It said rivers remember gratitude like stone remembers footsteps. Lucius listened, every word settling into him like seed into dark soil. But something darker stirred within the crowd. Change always invites shadow to dance beside light. Some citizens muttered that no river god should command Rome. Some priests whispered that perhaps this was illusion, trick, rebellion dressed as miracle. Empire rests heavy on habit, and habit does not like change even when change is gentle. Lucius sensed tension growing beneath awe, like undercurrent beneath calm tide. The being turned its pale eyes to Lucius and said the ritual must end forever, that no more brides should be taken, that Rome must grow wiser. Lucius nodded with reverence, but behind him voices sharpened like knives honed in fear. A senator, old and stern, stepped through the crowd, face stiff like marble that never knew warmth. He accused Lucius of treason, of blasphemy, of trickery. He argued that empire thrived because people obeyed. Disobedience was crack in foundation, and nothing frightened Rome more than cracks. Lucius answered slowly, voice even gentle like twilight. He said obedience meant nothing without justice. He said Rome's strength lay not in cruelty but in courage to change. The senator's eyes narrowed, filled with fury, cold and heavy. Leadership built on pride does not bow easily. He turned to priests, demanding ritual resume. He pointed at brides, telling them to return to the water, that gods must be fed, that Rome must stand firm. The brides recoiled, though exhaustion weighted them like wet cloth. The river being swelled, shoulders rising as tide. Water darkened beneath its form. Though gentle before, now it loomed like storm cloud unbroken. It told the senator that if Rome continued drowning daughters, then river would rise and take what it pleased instead. It said cruelty demands debt, and debt collects itself eventually. The senator, pale, now hesitated, one breath too long. Then he called for guards. Steel glinted against morning light like betrayal forged into shape. Soldiers arrived, confused but obedient. They were told to seize Lucius, seize the bride, silence the river, if river could be silenced. The being watched them approach, unblinking expression unreadable. Lucius stepped forward, placing himself between soldiers and girls like thin shield before wave. He spoke softly, telling them not to harm innocents, reminding them their own sisters could stand among those brides one day. Some soldiers faltered, stepping back, troubled by reflection of daughters waiting at home. Others advanced with duty heavy on their shoulders like wet armor. The river stirred, louder waves slapping against bank like warning heartbeat. The brides clutched hands, not knowing whether death or salvation would touch them first. Lucius knew words alone might not stop blades. He reached to the river with open palm. The being placed its cool hand in his, and the contact sent shock through earth like prophecy waking. Light rippled across water surface, pale, soft but powerful. Soldiers paused, blades trembling. The senator shouted to act to strike, but no one moved. Fear shifted into reverence breath by breath. And then from the river surface rose more figures, silhouettes like mist shaped into memory. Dozens, perhaps hundreds forms of past brides echoing through ages, eyes hollow yet peaceful. They gathered around Lucius like guardians of forgotten hope. The crowd screamed and knelt and stared as centuries of silence stood visible before them. Lucius whispered to the ghostly figures, asking if they sought vengeance. They shook their heads slow like reeds brushing morning tide. They desired only remembrance and peace, not repetition of sorrow. They wanted future girls to live, not drown in their stead. The senator, faltered voice breaking like pottery, dropped on marble. He ordered guards again, but no one obeyed. Steel lowered like winter fading into spring. The bride stepped away free like birds released from golden cages. Mothers rushed forward, pulling daughters close, tears wet and endless. The river being raised its arm again, and the spirits sank gently through surface, disappearing like sighs returning home. It turned to Lucius one final time and told him the city future now rested in choices made after this dawn. If Rome continued kindness, river would remain calm. If Rome returned to sacrifice, rivers would rise and empire would drown beneath sorrow. Then the being slowly dissolved into ripples, leaving only water silver and soft. Silence gripped the crowd like dew grips grass. Lucius remained still, feeling weight of history settle upon him like cloak woven of river mist. He knew transformation never arrives without resistance. Rome would not accept truth swiftly. Some would pray to the old ritual in secret. Some would plot his downfall quietly like poison steeping in wine. Yet hope had risen like tide no longer stopped by stone. As the sun climbed higher, people dispersed, uncertain whether miracle or rebellion occurred. Brides returned home fragile yet breathing alive like dawn after storm. Priests whispered among themselves, torn between faith and fear. Lucius walked away from river, knowing battle of belief was only beginning, not ended. Change stirred like serpent in garden, patient, hungry, inevitable. And deep beneath city streets, hidden in shadowed halls, a council gathered quietly to discuss what must be done with Lucius' future. The council met in shadowed halls where marble walls held the chill of centuries and candles flickered with reluctant light. Old senators dressed in robes heavier than their conscience whispered to each other like spiders weaving webs of worry. They spoke of tradition, of power, of obedience, as if words alone could patch cracks in Rome. Lucius' name was spoken low, careful, like a wind hiding from storm. They debated his punishment, though none truly understood the presence at the river that morning, or the figures that had risen from water like memory made flesh. Some feared him. Some envied courage that could bend river and history in one breath. Some simply desired silence, the kind only fear can buy. Lucius meanwhile walked slowly through streets, returning brides to families who clutched their daughters like treasure lost and found. Every home he passed, murmurs of awe followed him, though citizens pretended not to notice. They glanced sideways at streets, at walls, at the Tiber, wondering if perhaps the river still listened. Mothers whispered that the god was merciful, though they had never prayed so carefully before. Fathers shook heads as if holding hope inside tight cage of disbelief. The city exhaled collectively, like river itself paused to watch outcome of small courageous heart, standing against centuries of cruel habit. The brides told stories, trembling in voices too small for impact, yet too vivid to ignore. One described water cold and hungry and then turning gentle as if thanking them for resisting. Another spoke of seeing shapes in currents like long-dead sisters waiting for freedom finally remembered. Lucius listened every word, filing it away as guide for future decisions. Citizens leaned closer, though fearful eyes warned them to speak softly, because power when unsettled can bite as teeth bite. At night he returned home, lantern in hand, footsteps echoing empty streets. Moonlight touched river, pale and uncertain, as if unsure whether to forgive or judge. He knelt by water, watching gentle ripples where figures had disappeared. He whispered silently, pledging that no girl should drown again, and that voices of river brides would be remembered. Silence followed, not heavy, but expectant, like audience holding breath, waiting for next movement. Stars watched from above, unconcerned, but aligned with something beyond man or city or empire. The next morning the Senate convened in full session, robes bright and stern, faces pale with apprehension. Senators argued between themselves how to respond to events. Some wanted execution, others exile, others clever avoidance, pretending nothing had changed. They were clever at avoiding truth, clever at twisting reason to maintain comfort. Yet every voice spoke with unsteady rhythm because River and its unseen witnesses had altered the air itself. Lucius' absence was noted. Council decided to summon him publicly to explain action or face trial depending on outcome. Fear and fascination tangled in eyes of those who planned to act. Lucius meanwhile gathered the remaining girls who had not been chosen for ritual but now lived under shadow of what could have been. He spoke slowly about courage and choice and compassion. They listened wide-eyed, understanding only partially words that carried meaning heavier than stone, yet lighter than wind. Together they walked streets inspecting riverbanks, removing debris, repairing damage like ritual had never intended. Some citizens joined cautiously, unsure whether participation meant hope or rebellion. Others watched from distance, fearing consequence. River flowed calmly beneath gaze of all, as if approving but never speaking again. Despite calm above, hidden danger grew. Old priests who had once spoken truth now feared being silenced. Senators plotted quietly. Guards still loyal to empire considered whether obedience required cruelty or mercy. Rome loved tradition yet feared resistance more. Every night Lucius dreamt of river figures pale and endless, asking him to act with patience and wisdom and courage that did not burn out. Water memory would follow him forever. One morning news arrived from a distant district of empire. Reports told of river elsewhere responding to rituals in strange ways. Girls offered for sacrifice had survived. Rivers had turned gentle in unanticipated places. Citizens there whispered names of river brides and unseen water spirits. Word spread slowly at first, then gathered weight like snow rolling downhill. Across Rome, young men and women began questioning whether devotion required harm. Some scribes began writing subtly careful lessons in history of mercy versus obedience. Change was creeping through empire, quiet, patient, unyielding. Yet as light filled streets, a shadow darker than river current approached. The council decided that Lucius must be confronted not quietly, not indirectly, but in full display. A delegation of senators walked toward his residence, heavy-footed and deliberate. Their intention was to remove him from influence, perhaps forever. Guards followed, carrying authority like weapon heavier than iron. Citizens watched from behind shutters, wondering whether dawn would bring justice or tragedy. Lucius noticed approach from balcony above street. Calm filled him like river fills hollow stone. He descended stairs, slow, deliberate, ready to speak to counsel or defend or negotiate. But before he reached threshold, a voice shouted across courtyard, chilling yet familiar. One of the river brides, newly freed, ran forward, shouting warning that the river itself moved strangely upstream, as if carrying message or threat. Ripples stretched unnaturally long like fingers reaching toward city. Citizens froze, uncertain whether to fear or marvel. Lucius turned toward river, sensing energy beneath surface like heartbeat of something patient, ancient, and aware. Senators stopped steps, unsure whether to advance. Guards tensed as if water beneath might suddenly reclaim them. A hush unlike any before draped over entire courtyard, thick and expectant. And then the river surface shimmered violently, catching sunlight in a blinding flash that made every eye squint and stomach tremble. A figure began to rise, slow, deliberate shape, unlike last time, darker and wider with ripple of power behind it. Citizens gasped, brides screamed softly. Senators paled, guards froze. Lucius' heart beat not in fear but recognition. This was message from River, not words, not whisper, but demonstration of intent that future could not ignore. The figure turned toward Lucius, slow like tide turning against shore. Its presence heavy, not cruel but undeniable. And then it moved closer toward city, slowly, unhurried, carrying weight of expectation for all who had watched obediently or defied quietly in shadow of tradition. Every step toward bank felt deliberate, like history itself shifting on axis. The figure paused at riverbank, towering yet somehow serene. Its presence drew every gaze like gravity, pulling iron filings. Lucius stepped forward, careful, measured like one approaching fragile relics. The city around them held its breath as if air itself had forgotten to move. Citizens peered from windows and rooftops, some whispering prayers, some daring not to breathe. Brides huddled behind Lucius, feeling pulse of history press against their shoulders like weight too vast to carry yet impossible to ignore. Priests in red robes shuffled uncertain, caught between fear and recognition that rituals they had performed for generations now trembled, under eyes of something older than memory. The figure spoke, though lips barely moved, voice carrying weight of river current and centuries alike. It said that Rome had misinterpreted devotion for control, that sacrifice should never demand innocence stripped from choice. It spoke of mercy over obedience, kindness over ritual, and warned that empire built on cruelty will eventually crumble like clay walls in storm. Lucius listened, every word embedding it in mind as foundation for future action. He stepped closer and whispered softly to River Spirit, promising that tradition would be remembered, but never again at cost of life. The river acknowledged with a ripple, gentle yet deliberate. But Council of Senators had not come merely to observe. Their intention was to demand compliance or punishment. Old men draped in heavy robes moved forward, voice sharp with authority. They accused Lucius of blasphemy, of endangering empire, of encouraging disobedience. Guards shifted uneasily, unsure whether to act or hesitate. Citizens tightened grip on each other, unsure whether loyalty meant silence or courage. The river figure shifted slightly in water, eyes fixed on council, as if reminding them that power may flow differently than expected. Lucius spoke calmly, voice soft yet carrying steady like dawn breaking over quiet hills. He asked if empire thrived because fear or because wisdom guided action. He reminded council that rivers have memory and patience, and that humans must learn from both. Silence pressed heavy against marble walls. Senators struggled to respond. They were used to obedience and command, not discourse that challenged centuries. Even guards hesitated, uncertain whose authority prevailed. Then a breeze rippled across river surface, brushing robes of all present. The river figure raised a hand and water shimmered, catching sunlight. Shadows on council walls elongated, stretching toward city like warning. Whisper of water carried sound of voices, long gone brides who had been lost, now remembered, in echoes soft and powerful. Citizens shivered. Some knelt spontaneously, though no command asked. Others simply watched, unable to move, as if gravity itself shifted slightly with unfolding moment. Lucius called brides forward, asking them to speak not in fear but truth. One girl stepped ahead, voice trembling yet steady, declaring that daughters of Rome should never again be tools for devotion that cannot consent. Another spoke, naming memory of those lost generations ago who had no chance to choose. Crowd murmured in acknowledgement, understanding without fully comprehending magnitude. River figure observed silently, letting each word sink like stone through water. Old priest who had first questioned ritual now stepped forward, bending body like reed in wind. He supported Lucius' reasoning, insisting God's desire respect, not suffering. Murmurs of assent spread slowly. Citizens began to voice agreement, careful, soft, almost conspiratorial, yet undeniable. Even guards lowered weapons, slightly unsure whether obedience to council or river should guide action. Senators seethed, hidden behind marble authority. One especially old man drummed fingers on desk, impatiently attempting to regain control. He insisted ritual continue, claiming history sacred and empire unyielding. Lucius shook head, gently saying that empire survives not on cruelty but on compassion that endures when laws evolve. Citizens listened, holding breath. Priests whispered among themselves, unsure whether tradition was being rewritten before eyes. Suddenly, river surface shifted violently, water rising higher than expected, splashing cobblestones. Figure stepped fully onto bank, now humanoid, more solid, but still otherworldly, dripping water and reeds. It spoke again, warning that cruelty repeated would bring consequences beyond understanding. Voice soft yet undeniable, like tide changing course. Citizens felt shiver of realization that empire and river intertwined, and that obedience without wisdom carries cost. The old senator barked orders to arrest Lucius, claiming blasphemy and treason. Guards looked between each other, uncertainty in their eyes like shadow of river running through them. Brides clutched hands, silently hoping that courage of one man could protect them all. Citizens whispered under breath names of long-lost brides, echoing in minds like gentle chant. Even priests paused, unable to command obedience without betraying memory of river. Lucius stepped forward, placing himself deliberately between council and river figure. He spoke in measured tones, not fear nor arrogance but calm insistence. He declared that no girl would ever be forced into water again, that mercy was the true offering, and obedience must follow reason, not blind tradition. Citizens felt heartbeat of declaration vibrate through streets and walls. Guards paused, unsure whether to strike or yield. Senator's faltered voice cracking under weight of moment. River figure observed silently, then lifted arm toward city and water surged, forming ripples that raced through Tiber like pulse echoing history. Citizens gasped instinctively. Brides leaned toward Lucius, uncertain whether River would claim them still. Then without warning water recoiled, gently slipping back within banks. River figure nodded at Lucius, then slowly faded into current, leaving behind sense of calm authority that had not existed before. Crowd exhaled collectively, like tide retreating from shore. Senators remained frozen, unsure how to respond. Guards lowered weapons. Priests whispered apologies, perhaps to gods, perhaps to conscience. Brides hugged each other, wide-eyed, thankful, yet aware danger had not vanished completely. Citizens whispered rumors that River would remember and act again if cruelty returned. Lucius stood still, aware that moment was fragile, delicate, as leaf floating on water but promising if nurtured, could grow into new way for Rome. And as sun rose, higher casting golden hue across streets, one shadowy figure watched from distant rooftops, silent, observing Lucius and River with calculating eyes. Unknown to citizens or priests, this watcher carried influence and ambition. It had witnessed River miracle and understood power now shifting. It began to move silently through streets, whispering plans that could either safeguard change or destroy it before dawn fully arrived. The shadowy figure moved like smoke across rooftops, slipping unseen between columns and archways. Its eyes narrowed on Lucius and Riverbank, where brides gathered in quiet relief. Citizens whispered rumors, still trembling from morning events, unaware that eyes above measured each gesture, each word. Senators had retreated into council chambers, murmuring grievances and threats against unseen forces. Guards lingered, unsure whether to protect or obey new order suggested by River figure. The figure above moved with deliberate caution, its presence like silent tide threatening or promising change, depending on angle of sun and weight of heart. Lucius did not notice yet. He walked slowly along riverbanks, speaking gently with brides, teaching them how to care for one another, how to honor River without fear. Some citizens joined, curiously cautious yet inspired. They helped clear debris, repair banks, and plant greenery along shores. River reflected sunlight, calm, soft, like forgiving memory. Every step Lucius took felt deliberate, measured, as if aware of both past and potential future. Yet above him on rooftop, the figure watched and calculated unseen threads of influence and opportunity. Evening approached, and city softened into muted gold. Priests gathered quietly, discussing implications of River's intervention. Some feared reprisal from gods, some marveled at mercy finally observed. Citizens lingered, unsure whether to sleep with sense of relief or anticipation. Lucius returned home feeling weight of day heavy, yet purposeful. He knew transformation would not occur instantly. Change always moved slowly, testing patience and courage together. River's blessing had arrived, but enforcement would require wisdom and vigilance. Night deepened. Candlelight flickered through streets as shadows stretched unnaturally. Lucius was roused by soft tapping at window. A young bride, newly freed, slipped inside cautiously, eyes wide with fear yet determination. She whispered news of secret gatherings along city outskirts. Some citizens still clung to old rituals, performing offerings quietly in hope of appeasing gods. Others plotted resistance to Lucius' teachings, fearing disruption of Empire's order. Lucius nodded, understanding full weight of subtle challenges ahead. Change in Rome would not be simple. It would require vigilance, patience, and strategy. Meanwhile, the shadowy figure observed streets from distant roof, contemplating next move. Influence within council could not be ignored. Senate elders remained unsure whether to act directly against Lucius or manipulate public opinion quietly. The figure considered approach using rumor, fear, subtle persuasion. Knowledge of River events gave advantage. Citizens unaware of observers' plan continued lives cautious, inspired, and curious. River flowed silently, beneath city, beneath street, beneath stone, as if aware that influence above ground had not yet aligned with lesson delivered in daylight. The next morning, Lucius gathered council of newly aligned citizens and allies for discussion along riverbank. They spoke softly yet firmly about protecting girls from future harm, educating families about mercy, teaching priests alternative forms of devotion. Some citizens offered resources, others strategic insight. Every word weighed like careful brick placement in foundation of unseen building. Change required support of many layers. Society must breathe together for structures of compassion to endure. Across city, the shadowy figure infiltrated council chamber, slowly whispering dissent among old senators. They debated whether tradition could survive intervention from River and youth inspired by Lucius. Some argued action must be taken against him, others proposed subtle delays to undermine influence. Citizens unaware of behind-the-scenes plotting followed routines along streets, cautious, hopeful eyes turning toward River each dawn, each dusk. Guards vacillated, uncertain whom loyalty required serving. Lucius meanwhile sensed undercurrent of tension growing unseen. Not all welcomed transformation. Ambition and fear remained persistent human companions. He continued instructing young brides in care for River and self-awareness in community. They learned to tend to banks, to remove debris, to record rituals in memory, not sacrifice. Lessons were slow, patient study, like River carving stone imperceptibly, yet inevitably. Citizens watching hesitated, yet curiosity and hope spread subtly, threading through city like new roots seeking soil. One evening, the shadowy figure approached closest ally among citizens, discreet whisper, offering alternative plan to seize influence over River policy. The ally considered, carefully weighing loyalty to Lucius versus promise of personal gain and power. Decisions made here would ripple like current through city, heart affecting lives of girls, families, priests, and future citizens. The figure spoke of subtle disruptions, influence over council, over guards, using rumor, persuasion, threats, careful layering, not force. All this while River flowed silent beneath, observing like patient teacher. Lucius sensed tension mounting. Events of River and figure's presence suggested unseen forces seeking to reshape balance. He instructed brides to remain vigilant to subtle changes among citizens, to report anomalies to trusted allies, and to maintain calm respect toward River as guide and witness. Night fell deep, quiet, soft, with only occasional whisper of wind through streets. Shadows stretched long and indistinct. Citizens slept cautiously alert, dreaming of freedom or restraint. River gleamed pale under moonlight, silently monitoring patience and courage of city. And then a sudden ripple surged along Tiber surface, unusually fast and strong. Water shimmered violently, catching silver light and twisting into shapes indistinct yet intentional. Brides gasped, eyes wide, as River seemed to speak once more, warning not through words but movement. Lucius felt urgency pulse within chest, as if River beckoned attention to unseen threat approaching from beyond streets and rooftops into heart of city where influence waited silent, patient. Shadowy figure now moved closer undetected toward council chamber, aware that ripple carried unseen consequences that could shift balance of power and destiny of Rome itself. The ripple on Tiber carried urgency like heartbeat of city itself. Lucius leaned over riverbank, watching water shimmer silver beneath moonlight. Movement was deliberate, yet subtle. He sensed warning not through words, but pulse beneath current. Brides clutched hands, uncertain, not fully understanding meaning, yet trusting Lucius' instinct. Citizens who had gathered along streets whispered soft, anxious murmurs, unsure whether River intended blessing or threat. Even priests in distance paused ritual study, feeling tension thickening night air like storm gathering. Meanwhile, shadowy figure moved silently through alleys and rooftops closer to council chamber. Every step calculated, every breath controlled. It understood that influence over council could undo Lucius' work or redirect future in unforeseen ways. Ambition in human heart often mirrors river current flowing around obstacles, seeking path of least resistance. Figure's eyes gleamed, observing weaknesses, vulnerabilities, alliances. It would act not with force, but patience, shaping perception through rumor, subtle persuasion, and fear. Change in Rome now contested above ground, even as River enforced lessons below. Lucius sensed undercurrent of unrest in city. Not all citizens embraced transformation. Fear lingered, stubbornly clinging to habit, old rituals deeply embedded like roots in stone. Some whispered that River figure's appearance was trickery, others feared divine retribution for challenging tradition. Lucius spoke softly to brides and allies, assuring them that vigilance must accompany compassion. Freedom must be protected by awareness. Every choice observed, every action deliberate. City fragile yet hopeful, like reed bending in breeze yet anchored to riverbank. Council convened next day, still unaware of observer and shadows. Senators debated Lucius' influence and River's involvement. Some argued that empire required obedience unquestioned. Others whispered cautiously, acknowledging River's message of mercy and warning. Guards listened silently, unsure whether to act on command or conscience. Citizens gathered outside, unsure whether assembly would enforce tradition or acknowledge River's lesson. Streets held quiet tension as if city itself held breath awaiting decision. Shadowy figures slipped into chamber unseen, slipping between columns and shadows, weaving subtle influence through whispered words to senators. One by one, doubts seated, carefully aligning fear, ambition, and self-interest to shape outcome. Influence spread like invisible current, flowing beneath visible conversation, beneath stone, beneath history itself. No one spoke, a loud figure present, yet undetectable. Only Lucius' awareness of subtle tension gave indication of unseen forces at work. By afternoon, River grew calm, reflecting pale sunlight, soft silver across stone and banks. Lucius instructed brides to continue observing water-tending banks and recording memory of events in journals, not sacrifice. River became silent teacher, patient, guiding hands without sudden display. Citizens nearby began following example learning methods, slowly absorbing lesson through repetition and presence. Knowledge became living structure, threaded through city, slowly persistent. Then sudden report arrived. Guards near city outskirts discovered small group attempting secret ritual offerings. Girls hidden from city view being presented to water as if ignoring recent miracle. Lucius gathered teams, swiftly instructing careful intervention. Approach not with force but awareness, teaching how river blessing extended to protect all vulnerable. Patrol quietly redirected girls, preventing harm without confrontation, using soft authority reinforced by memory of river intervention. Awareness spread quietly yet decisively through community, reinforcing transformation. Meanwhile, shadowy figure continued weaving plans, subtly nudging council members, planting seeds of division and delay. Ambition tempered patience, shaping influence over city silently. Rumor slowly moving through corridors, stirring unease, while citizens unaware moved through daily life, holding cautious optimism. Each day, citizens observed small changes in attitudes, behavior, and rituals, adapting without awareness that manipulation. Shadow above influenced perception and decision. Lucius felt subtle pressure from above ground and beneath river. Tiber itself, calm, serene, silver flowing, soft as memory, yet constantly monitoring vigilance, courage, and morality of city. River had communicated, but maintenance required constant attention. Even slightest lapse risked return to cruelty. Every choice must be deliberate, every teaching reinforced. Responsibility stretched weight across shoulders as if carrying centuries of tradition and correction at once. That evening, as light faded, deep shadows stretched across streets and riverbanks. Lucius walked slowly among brides and citizens, ensuring understanding, vigilance, and reflection. Sudden shift in current rippled across. Tiber, not threatening but deliberate, like nudge from teacher observing students learning balance. River shimmered silver, then darkened briefly, forming shapes indistinct yet purposeful. Brides gasped. Citizens froze, uncertain whether blessing or warning. Lucius leaned close to water, whispering assurance, soft yet firm, that river was guiding caution and observation must continue. Then from shadowed alley near council chamber came sounds subtle yet deliberate, a soft footstep followed by pause. Citizens unaware of presence continued routines, unaware of figure moving toward influence point, silent, like night itself. Lucius sensed ripple of threat, subtle like current beneath calm surface, aware that shadow not yet revealed would soon intersect with river lesson, potentially altering trajectory of city and protection of future generations of girls and citizens. The footstep in alley remained subtle yet deliberate. Lucius sensed presence like faint disturbance in water. Shadowy figure moved closer toward council chamber, calculating each motion, anticipating reaction and resistance. Citizens oblivious continued routines, along streets tending shops and homes, though tension lingered faintly in air like aftertaste of storm. Brides walked cautiously along riverbank, listening for instructions, learning patience and vigilance as river had taught. Every heartbeat carried weight of past events and uncertainty of future choices. Council chamber held quiet tension. Senators whispered, quietly debating influence of Lucius and River's intervention. Fear of defiance battled habit of obedience. Guards stood alert, though uncertain whether to enforce old orders or heed subtle shift in authority implied by River's presence. Rumors had begun filtering through city, silently planting seeds of reflection, curiosity, and resistance. Shadows stretched long across chamber floor as sunlight waned. Shadowy figure moved through corridors, careful, unseen, unnoticed, whispering to hesitant senators, shaping thought, subtle influence like water shaping stone over centuries. It understood that power did not require confrontation but persuasion, timing, patience. Every suggestion framed, carefully planting doubt, curiosity, concern, layering influence without exposure. Council members began questioning motives, questioning reality, unsure whether events at River were miracle or threat to established order. Meanwhile, Lucius led brides and citizens along riverbank reviewing lessons of mercy, vigilance, observation. Every stone, every ripple, every whisper of water became teaching moment. Citizens learning without awareness that structure a future city, slowly shifting toward protection, compassion, responsibility. River calm beneath their feet like patient instructor monitoring persistence, courage, and morality of humans it nurtured. Suddenly a ripple surged along Tiber, catching pale moonlight silver as though signal. Lucius felt pulse of urgency quicken within chest. He gathered brides and allies, instructing them to maintain awareness, report anomalies, prepare subtle interventions without confrontation. River's presence silent, yet unmistakable, signaling balance, still delicate. Citizens nearby sensed tension, unaware of source, held breath collectively, as if River had taken guardianship of entire city. Shadowy figure, now closer within chamber hallway, overhearing discussion. Every word careful, observed for vulnerabilities to manipulate, influence. Senators unwittingly provided opportunity, planting seeds for disruption, undermining trust in Lucius and River lessons. Through suggestion, rumor, subtle questioning. Influence spread like quiet current flowing, unseen, shaping perception. Guards listening picked up uncertainty, infecting confidence, hesitant to act decisively. Lucius noticed subtle tremor in city, not from River, but from human fear and ambition. Awareness sharpened instinct. He instructed brides to watch subtle signs of manipulation, unrest, to report carefully. Knowledge of human tendency to resist change tempered with River's guidance. Observing citizens noticing shadows, hesitating, recognizing ripples of tension that must be addressed carefully without force. As night deepened, shadows lengthened along rooftops and streets. Shadowy figure finally paused at council chamber doorway, calculating next move. A whisper of movement like soft wind hinted of presence. Citizens nearby, oblivious, moved slowly through quiet streets, unaware of imminent intersection of influence and River lesson. Lucius felt urgency pulse within chest. Knowledge of balance, delicate and fragile, impressed upon every action, instruction, and observation. Then a sudden surge of water rose along riverbank high enough to ripple across stone and streets. Brides gasped, holding hands as River shimmered, silver darkened, briefly forming shapes indistinct yet deliberate. Citizens froze, unsure whether blessing or warning. Lucius leaned close to water, whispering reassurance, soft yet firm, that River guided caution, vigilance, observation. Shadow above remained silent, waiting for moment to act, influencing counsel, while River below reminded all of invisible power beyond human calculation. A single guard moved incorrectly, stepping too close to riverbank, startling nearby citizen. Ripples surged, responding to disruption, not cruel but warning, like teacher correcting student. Lucius observed, carefully reinforcing instructions, teaching observation, patience, consequence. Shadowy figure paused momentarily, sensing subtle shift in city awareness, realizing River remained ultimate authority beyond subtle persuasion. Influence had limits measured by morality, vigilance, and natural authority of River lesson. Suddenly, a figure appeared at distant bridge watching city. Neither shadow above nor River below, but observer unknown. Its eyes pale, reflecting moonlight silver and dark, calculating presence. Citizens unaware moved along streets, whispers soft as if sensing expectation in air. Lucius noticed ripple disturbance, subtle yet deliberate. River shimmered, signaling awareness of new variable. Balance of city fragile, delicate, as reed floating in current, uncertain whether guide or threat would dominate next sequence of events. Affecting brides, citizens, council, and future of Rome itself. The figure on distant bridge remained still, watching city below with pale, reflective eyes. Lucius sensed ripple of unease along Tiber, as if River itself recognized presence not yet revealed. Brides paused their activities along banks, holding hands, uncertain, not fully understanding subtle warning. Citizens moved cautiously along streets, whispering rumors of River miracles, yet unaware of shadowed observer now influencing council and streets. Tension thickened quietly like fog settling over city, stone and water. Inside council chamber, senators whispered nervously, debating Lucius' influence and recent river events. Some argued empire required obedience unquestioned. Others questioned morality and necessity of past rituals. Guards remained uncertain, unsure whether to act on traditional orders or heed subtle authority implied by river. Every decision carried weight, potentially affecting city future, as balance delicate like reed swaying in strong current. Shadowy figures slipped carefully among corridors, watching and influencing subtly, using fear, ambition, curiosity to shape council perception. Lucius moved along riverbank with brides and allies, instructing patient vigilance, observation, and recording of events. Every stone ripple and whisper of water became lesson. Citizens nearby slowly adopting practice, unaware of subtle influence above ground. Knowledge spread quietly, persistent, shaping future behavior and collective awareness. River calm beneath feet like silent teacher, monitoring integrity, morality, and courage of those it touched. Suddenly ripples surged along Tiber surface, forming shimmering silver shapes, indistinct yet purposeful. Lucius felt urgency pulse within chest. River as presence, warning not through words but subtle movements, signaling careful attention to human behavior and emerging threats. Brides clutched hands. Citizens froze, uncertain whether blessing or cautionary signal. Lucius leaned close to water, whispering reassurance and instructions, soft yet firm, maintaining vigilance, patience, and deliberate action. Shadowy figure moved silently among council members, planting seeds of doubt and fear subtly through whispered words framed as advice. Senators questioned reality, events, and intentions. Guards hesitated, unsure which authority to obey. Influence spread like hidden current, shaping perception slowly without direct confrontation. Lucius sensed subtle disturbance. Awareness sharpened, recognizing need to reinforce vigilance among allies. River surged again, briefly rippling silver across stone and banks, forming shapes that seemed to reflect centuries of memory. Lucius whispered guidance, reminding brides and citizens to maintain calm observation and subtle intervention. River's lesson reinforced patience, vigilance, and morality. Citizens, sensing slight disturbance, adjusted behavior unconsciously. Awareness spread quietly, reinforcing foundations of change. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed across distant rooftop, startling citizens along streets. Shadowy figure paused momentarily, calculating next move. Observation of council continued. Influence carefully extended through fear, curiosity, and rumor. Citizens unaware continued routines, adjusting subtly to tension and river guidance. Lucius observed every subtle motion, reinforcing lessons of awareness, responsibility, and courage. A small group of citizens approached riverbank, attempting secret ritual offerings. Lucius and brides intervened with gentle guidance, preventing harm. Patrol instructed subtle intervention, emphasizing protection and understanding over confrontation. Lessons absorbed quietly by observers, as river shimmered silver beneath calm surface, monitoring events carefully. Shadow above recognized limits of influence constrained by river's presence. Night deepened, streets quieted. Citizens returned home, cautious yet inspired. River shimmered pale silver beneath moonlight, soft yet deliberate in presence. Lucius walked slowly among brides, reinforcing observation, patience, vigilance. Shadowy figure retreated temporarily, but eyes remained fixed on city, calculating next intervention. Balance delicate, fragile, yet shifting slowly as river lessons continued, embedding through observation, action, and subtle influence. Suddenly ripples surged violently along Tiber, higher than previous. Shapes formed, indistinct yet unmistakable, signaling warning, not punishment. Brides gasped, holding hands. Citizens froze, uncertain whether blessing or threat. Lucius leaned close, whispering reassurance, soft yet firm, maintaining calm, teaching observation, vigilance, and patience. River's silent authority unmistakable. Shadow above paused, recognizing river remained ultimate guide, shaping city beyond human manipulation. From distant bridge, another figure emerged, silhouette reflected moonlight, silver and dark, watching river, city, and citizens. Lucius felt subtle disturbance within chest, recognizing presence of variable previously unseen. River shimmered, signaling awareness of new potential threat. Balance of city fragile, delicate, as reed floating in current, uncertain which influence would dominate. Future of brides, citizens, council, and Rome itself. The figure on distant bridge moved slowly across moonlit stones like shadow made solid. Lucius felt pulse of urgency in chest as ripple traveled through Tiber beneath him. Brides clutched hands, learning subtle lessons of patience, vigilance, and observation. Citizens moved cautiously along streets, whispering rumors, still unsure of meaning of river interventions. Shadowed observer, now fully aware of city's heartbeat, calculating influence over council guards and citizens alike. River shimmered silver beneath moonlight, watching silently, patient yet undeniable. Inside council chamber, debate continued, tension thick like fog. Senators argued obedience, tradition, morality. Guards uncertain whether to enforce orders or heed subtle authority implied by River. Shadowy figure whispered among corridors, sowing doubt, curiosity, and fear. Carefully framed as guidance, shaping council perception slowly without confrontation. Citizens unaware went about routines, adjusting subtly to tension, river presence, and whispered rumors. Lucius moved deliberately along riverbank, instructing brides and allies, reinforcing lessons of vigilance, patience, morality, and subtle intervention. Every ripple, stone, and whisper of water became teaching moment. Knowledge spread, quietly persistent through observation and practice, embedding new behavior without force. River calm beneath feet like patient instructor, monitoring integrity, courage, and morality of those touched. Suddenly ripples surged violently along Tiber surface, silver shapes forming indistinct yet deliberate. Lucius felt urgency pulse within chest. River's presence signaling caution. Brides gasped. Citizens froze, uncertain whether blessing or warning. Lucius whispered guidance, reinforcing calm observation and deliberate action, emphasizing vigilance and patience. River's lesson unmistakable, silent yet authoritative. Shadowy figure advanced closer to council chamber, quietly observing interactions and reactions. Influence spread carefully through whispered words and subtle suggestions, shaping perceptions slowly without detection. Senators questioned events, motives, and reality. Guards hesitated, unsure which authority to obey. Citizens continued routines, unaware of silent struggle, shaping future of city and river, lessons embedded within consciousness of observers. Lucius sensed tension rising. Events of river and figures' presence suggested unseen threat. He instructed brides and allies to maintain vigilance, observation, patience, and subtle intervention. Awareness heightened, sensing slight disturbances, subtle gestures, and unspoken intentions. River shimmered beneath calm surface, monitoring morality, courage, and attentiveness of those under its influence. Night deepened, shadows stretched long across streets and riverbank. Citizens returned home cautious, yet inspired by morning events. Brides rested holding hands, reinforcing lessons of vigilance, patience, and moral responsibility. River shimmered silver beneath moonlight, calm yet deliberate, signaling continued oversight and guidance. Shadow above paused momentarily, calculating next move, recognizing limits imposed by River's authority and presence. Suddenly loud crash echoed from distant rooftops, startling citizens along streets. Ripples surged across Tiber, higher than previous, signaling warning, not punishment. Brides gasped, holding hands. Citizens froze, uncertain of meaning. Lucius leaned close, whispering reassurance, soft yet firm, maintaining calm, teaching observation, vigilance, and patience. River shimmered, signaling continued presence and authority. From distant bridge, new figure emerged, silhouette reflecting silver and dark moonlight, observing city, river, and citizens. Lucius sensed subtle disturbance, recognizing new variable previously unseen. Ripples surged beneath feet, signaling awareness of emerging threat or influence. Shadow above retreated temporarily, but eyes remained fixed on city, calculating next intervention. River shimmered, signaling continued monitoring of morality, vigilance, and courage, shaping behavior and actions of citizens and brides alike. Council chamber tension thickened. Senators whispered, debating morality, obedience, and influence of River and Lucius. Guards remained uncertain, hesitant to act decisively. Citizens unaware moved cautiously through streets, adapting subtly to events, sensing, yet unable to interpret lessons embedded in behavior of River and observer. Every heartbeat carried weight of past interventions, present vigilance and uncertainty of future actions, shaping city's destiny. Lucius stood at riverbank, observing moonlight on water, listening to ripple of current and heartbeat of city. Brides and allies gathered around, reinforcing lessons of patience, vigilance, and subtle intervention. River shimmered silver beneath calm surface, signaling approval and ongoing monitoring. Shadowed figures above and across city calculated next move, aware River's authority ultimate and unstoppable. Citizens quietly watched streets, rivers, and stone adapting subtly yet persistently to lesson delivered, in daylight and reinforced silently by night. And as first light of dawn touched Tiber surface, shimmering gold and silver ripples surged once more, subtle yet deliberate, signaling continuation of lesson, vigilance, courage, and moral responsibility. Lucius felt weight of responsibility settle firmly yet purposefully across shoulders, understanding that true change requires constant attention, patience, and guidance of river and city combined. Shadow above withdrew, retreating silently, calculating next opportunity, aware that river's authority and guidance remained ultimate. Brides and citizens alike felt ripple of continuity, reassurance, and hope threading quietly through heart of Rome. The river flowed silently beneath city stone and streets, carrying memory, vigilance, and morality. Lucius watched, calm, deliberate, knowing that balance had been restored for now, yet fragile, delicate, and dependent upon constant awareness, courage, and care. And somewhere beyond city walls, shadowed figures plotted future interventions, knowing that lesson of river would not be forgotten but could be challenged if patience or vigilance faltered. Rome had been changed gently yet decisively. Future uncertain yet guided by memory, river, and courage of few willing to observe, act, and protect. The city breathed quietly beneath rising sun, silver glinting on water, reflecting lessons learned, vigilance reinforced, and morality preserved. Brides returned home forever changed, citizens whispered cautiously, yet hope persisted. Lucius remained at riverbank, patient, calm, aware that responsibility would endure, like Tiber flowing endlessly, shaping city life quietly, relentlessly, persistently. And somewhere beyond rooftop, shadow awaited next move, silently calculating consequences of river as influence and human ambition intertwined. If you want to uncover more forgotten tales of courage, tragedy, and the strange ways history shapes humanity, subscribe to Stories Before Sleep and join us as we drift through the dark and fascinating corners of the past.